Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode 207. On today's episode, you're going to hear from Scott Nice of 30-06 Outdoors. 30-06 Outdoors was started way back in 2007 by Matt Minshall. The success of the company is based on Matt's faith, hard work, and long hours, but they also love chasing whitetails. One of the goals for the company is to make the most complete manufacturer of hunting and sporting goods in the outdoor industry. They intend to accomplish this by adding new items to their product list each year. Not just any items, but innovative items. Useful items are a must-have for all sportsmen and women. Hey, listeners, don't forget to text 33444 Food Plot for your free Food Plot ebook. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host. We're heading over to Columbus, Ohio, and we're going to talk to some folks at 30-06 Outdoors. And we're talking with Scott Nice. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bruce. How you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. And Scott, thank you so much for reaching out to me. And in the warm-up, we were talking about Joe Willis down in way down south, and that you had just gone turkey hunting with him. Tell me that story.
Yeah. Oh, we opening day of turkey season here in Ohio. It was I think around April 20th, and I met up with Doug DeHarpart and Joe Willis up in Northeast Ohio. We're all part of a group called Created Outdoors, and we all wanted to get together and do a little bit of spring turkey hunting. And I'm not a huge turkey hunter, but I do some. But sitting there with Joe in a blind, watching him work those turkey calls, the man is just amazing. I probably learned more in 2 days sitting in a blind with him about turkey calling than I have in the last 40 years. So it was definitely an experience. Yeah, no birds, but we had an awesome time.
Hey, a lot of guys and gals are out turkey hunting. Our listeners, how do you cross over from turkey hunting to your whitetail hunting? What's the crossover for you?
Well, for the whitetails, man, it never stops. I fortunate enough to have, kind of a not a huge piece of property, but just a nice sized chunk of property. And for me, it's all about the year round, basically turning the property into a wildlife friendly area. I do food plots, run feeders, manage the forest area. We're always doing something to create better habitat for the deer, to hold more deer, to grow bigger deer. And then, just kind of managing the herd that we have there. I live in a pretty rural area, a lot of vast amounts of big timber, and those deer can be anywhere they want to be whenever they want to be. We've it's not like hunting some of the larger crop areas where there's fence rows or small blocks of woods and the deer have to go down this fence row to stay hidden, or stay in this block of woods. There's for miles in any direction. To me, it's just big timber. The deer can go where they want when they want. So for me, it's all about making my property where they want to be, where they have food, where they have water, where they have, what they feel is a safe place to bed. And, that's how you're going to hold your deer and keep them there year round. I don't want them there just during hunting season. I want them there through the summer to feed on the, I do a multi-step food plot. You don't ever want to plant just one big food plot and be done. You need food for, early season. You need food for mid-season. You need food through the winter. And there's different types of plantings you want to do for that. You want to have water on the property, just things like that. And so for me, it's the hunting may end, but the preparation never does. It's just kind of year round.
Well, I hear you're a 365-day hunter, and because you're a steward of your land, then other critters like to hang around like turkeys.
Sure.
Now, one thing you said, and I want to explore this a little bit, and, we're going to go for, about 35 minutes or so today. And when you hunt deer in big timber, aren't there natural funnels or pinch points due to terrain, due to honeysuckle or extremely thick brush, or creek bottoms? Tell me how that works so you can pattern a buck and pretty much know where he's going to be or going from his cover, his bedding area to food source or water.
Sure. That certainly plays into effect. You've got saddles and ridges, or at the head, we call them hollows, in southern Ohio. Out west, they call them draws and coulees and whatever. But, at the head of a big hollow, deer, for the most part, will about always take the path of least resistance. If they don't have to ford through a bunch of thick brush or down through a big, deep gully, they're not going to do it. They're going to, for the most part, they'll take the higher ground, up on a ridge or something that way. Unless they have to go down for a food source or for water or if something scares them, if there's something chasing them or whatever. But for the most part, just their normal moving patterns. You can use old fence rows, down where I'm at, years ago, the old farmers, they didn't have to buy a fence post. They wouldn't, they just nail the wire right to a tree. And there's not a lot of big open fields where we're at, but they would run cattle back in the woods, and the the cows would eat leaves and brush, whatever. So deer will use those. They'll follow those old fence rows. They'll, at the head of a hollow, usually where, toward the top of a ridge, instead of going through the hollow, they'll go up around the top. So, you can certainly use those areas, study the topography of your land. Of course, the best thing to do is just boots on the ground and go in and scout and find your trails. And of course, now with trail cameras, those probably one of the single greatest tools that has been brought into the hunting industry. Instead of you sitting there hoping a buck comes through, or, well, I saw a buck there, 3 months ago or whatever, you can put a trail camera out and that's monitoring that area for you 24/7. And if he's there or not. And, if he's not there, then you move on.
Out west where I live in Colorado, and we hunt elk by running the contours. And if you get it on an elk trail, and it could be 5 miles, 10 miles long, it really doesn't matter.
Right.
They'll run the contours, and I've taken that concept and put it into my whitetail hunting bag of tricks, because I firmly believe, and you said it so well, they'll follow the path of least resistance.
Sure.
And, going from here to there. And listeners, so if you ever hunt big timber, if you ever hunt places that don't have food plots, they're not coming out to a specific field that you can intercept between bedding and the field, think about going on Google Earth or getting My Topo Maps or whatever and really study. Spend hours looking for just little changes. And I found, and you probably found the same thing, Scott, when you find a saddle, you're always going to find a trail.
Sure. And, here in the East, most deer throughout the course of a year pretty much live within about a mile of where they bed. For the most part, you're seldom going to find them more than a mile. During the rut, some of these big bucks, mature bucks, your 3.5-year-old and up, it's really not uncommon for them to travel 5, 10. I've even seen some studies where they've radio collared mature deer, and, they've tracked them as much as 15 miles away from their square mile home range. But, aside from the rut, basically if you kind of know where deer's living, you're pretty much within a mile of theirs where you're going to kill him. I mean, or see him at least, that's at least here in the East, that's how it pretty much works.
Well, I think it works that way just about everything. If you go to Whitetails Unlimited or KGMA and look at the studies, the radio collar studies, it's amazing how far the bucks don't move except during the rut. I've had them go a long way where we hunt along the Bear River. They'll run that river for miles, literally. They'll leave their core area and then they're gone, and then they'll loop back. But we've seen them on trail cameras from where we have our bunkhouse on the Bear River, and there's a great funnel, and they have to go through it, so we get great pictures. But then the farm where we hunt is probably 1 mile, 2 miles. Let's call it 2.5 miles away, and we've seen the same buck, up on that farm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've got deer at my place in the fall, pretty steady at my place. And then all of a sudden I'll lose them for a couple of days. And I've got a friend of mine that lives, a couple miles out the ridge, so to speak. And he called me one day and said, "Hey man, I just had this, giant buck show up on camera." He sends me the picture and I'm like, "Okay, how many pictures do you want of this deer?" He's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Dude, that deer's been living here, And he's like, "You got to be kidding me." And he said, "I've never seen that deer before." But he popped up on my trail camera, and I'm like, well, I've got, probably 3,000 pictures of that deer. He was a great buck. He was just, wasn't what I wanted to harvest yet. I didn't feel he was old enough. So, I never messed with him. But, just like I said, a couple miles away, I lost him for a couple of days, and it was during the rut. And, my buddy calls, and there he is, and of course 2 miles is not really that far, but, I've heard of them, being radio collared. I believe Whitetail Institute, radio collared about 160-inch, 4-year-old deer, and they radio collared that thing 15 miles from where they had originally caught him and collared him, which was his home range. And most of the year they never, located him more than a mile away. But then during the rut, all bets are off. That deer was gone. He's out doing his thing. He's looking for does. And
there's more evidence, folks, for an all-day sit, and pack a lunch, because you just never know when Mr. Wonderful's going to come, and he has nothing to do with your land at all.
No,
he doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, so many guys have told me, they said, send me pictures of deer they've killed, and they're like, we've never seen this deer before. And, it's like, wow, they just can't believe it. And I said, hey guys, during the rut, I'd say 8 out of 10 guys probably never kill the deer that they're really after. It's, most of them tell me it's a deer I've never seen before, but like I said, during the rut, those bucks, they're on a mission. I mean, that's what they live for, is, to breed those does that basically that block of time every year around November, early December. And that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, agreed. Hey, tell us about 30-06 Outdoors. I love, the sharing and talk about whitetails, but part of our show is to let people know about what's out there and what kind of companies we're talking to. And so give us a couple of minutes about 30-06 Outdoors.
Sure. Yeah, 30-06 Outdoors, we actually, we don't really do anything with firearms. All of our products are I'm going to say most of our products are archery driven. We do a few soft gun cases, some pistol cases, hip holster, concealed carry, some gun slings. But for the most part, we're an archery accessories manufacturer. Soft bow cases. We do bow sights, stabilizers, releases, air arrest, quivers. We have our own line of lubricants. It's a proprietary blend for us. We call it snot products. I don't know if you've heard the old saying, slicker than snot.
Hold on. Do you make that for my crossbow?
I do. Yeah. We have, it's called Rail Snot. Yep,
yeah, I love it. Folks, I got to give you a shout out. Folks, I've tried a lot of, rail lubricants because I shoot a crossbow because I've had some ailments and I can't pull the compound anymore. That being said, so I went through a lot because there's a tremendous amount of friction when you're shooting a bolt over 300 feet per second. It burns and you can smell whatever your string's made of, you can smell it. No, you can.
Yep. Yeah,
it literally burns, and so you count the shots on your crossbow because you're going to get only so many shots, and I don't care how much serving they put on it, you're going to burn it.
You're going to burn it. Yep.
And so rail snot solved my problem. I'm getting probably 30, 40, I can't say 50% because I haven't clicked it that far, but the data is in, and if you're not using rail snot, then you're hurting yourself with the longevity of your string. How's that, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. And we also have we've had it out a couple years now. It's called our XFuel 325. It is actually a dauber type bottle with a lube in it for the metal rail crossbow. Your composite rail bows, if you were to look at them microscopically, they're still a little rough. So our actual rail snot is more of a thicker type lubricant that kind of fills those little nooks and crannies in the rail, to fill it in and give it a good lubrication. And then on the metal rail, obviously it's much smoother. You don't need quite as thick a layer of lubricant. So we come out with our XFuel 325, and you just simply daub it on the rail and swipe it. It puts a very thin coat of a super slick lubricant on there, and you're good to go.
So crossbow hunters, and I know we're growing.
Sure.
As a tribe, as a community, kids, women, and guys, if you listen to this and saying, I'd never shoot a crossbow, I get it. I shoot it because I'm unable to. I've got a permit from Colorado that says because of some ailments, I can shoot a crossbow. So I'm going to do it because I'm going to keep hunting. And my crossbow is an Excalibur, and it's a recurve bow and a rail. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. And so, sometimes, and I just got to say something about this, Scott. Sometimes we look at each other and say, you're not shooting a traditional bow. Oh, I wouldn't shoot anything but a compound. Oh, crossbows, forget it. That's not whatever. Well, we're all hunters, and so we should all embrace the other guy. And it's more than Ford or Chevy debate, because sometimes if you go on social media, people really get off on other people's choices. And so don't do that. As the hosts of Whitetail Rendezvous, we're only hurting ourselves. Scott, your thought on that little comment?
I agree 100%. If it's legal and you're doing it ethically, if it's a legal weapon to use in your area and you're hunting ethically, I absolutely agree. There's the crossbow market has opened up so many opportunities. A lot of the youth that, maybe can't pull a compound or enough weight on a recurve or a compound to hunt, are able to get out there in the archery season and hunt with a bow. It's a crossbow, but the thing still shoots an arrow out. So, I absolutely. And then folks that have shoulder issues or back issues and can't hunt with a longbow or recurve or a compound, it keeps them out in the woods hunting. I say this, it's time to put on the big boy pants, quit crying around about stuff. Hunters are hunters. If it's legal and you're doing it ethically, keep on keeping on. That's it. Point blank.
No, yep. Enough said on that. So let's jump into a little bit of Matt Minshall's backstory and how 30-06 came about.
Yeah, Matt's a great guy. He's probably one of the hardest working guys you'll ever meet. If you work 40 hours, he'll work 60. His family had owned a sporting goods store for years. Started out basically as a bait shop, and then it kind of evolved into, a bait and archery shop, and the archery end of it has just continued to grow. And Matt had worked there since he was pretty small. And, after 20 years of retail, he was just thinking it was time he wanted to do something else. And he wanted to stay in the outdoor industry, but he wanted to kind of get into maybe the manufacturing end of things. So he sold his boat. He was he loved playing guitar. He was in a little band and stuff, and he sold a lot of his music equipment and his boat, and had a shipment of bow cases made and started selling them, and actually was selling them out of his garage. And about 5 years ago, he leased a office and warehouse facility, and just kept expanding and growing. And I come on board with him. I actually met Matt about 6 years ago, and I was doing some freelance design work for him for some products. And he called me up one day and he said, "Hey, man," he said, "the company's growing." He said, "Why don't you just come to work for me? And, we'll see what we can do with this thing." And so 4 years ago, I come to work here full time, and the company's just growing in leaps and bounds. Our product line's expanding rapidly. Every year we're adding new stuff, innovative stuff. We're just going to keep rolling with it and growing with it. And as long as people are into archery, and archery seems to be growing everywhere, pretty much worldwide, really. We've got dealers, distributors and dealers all over the world. I mean, we've got New Zealand, Australia, the UK, Canada, Mexico, all over the U.S. We send pretty regular shipments to New Zealand. We've got a distributor / archery pro shop in New Zealand, and we send them a ton of stuff every year. So it's growing everywhere. And as long as people's bow hunting and they like our stuff, we're going to keep making it and selling it and add new items every year and just keep it growing.
Well, in the industry, again, QDMA states that over 17 million people hunt, and we have a whitetail population in over 37 states. So we got a lot of people out there. So, hey, if you haven't, folks, give Scott a call or send him an email. How would you want people to get a hold of you at 30-6 Outdoors, Scott?
They can. They're welcome to call the office. It's 614-409-9300. They can go to our website, www.30-06outdoors.com. Send an email through there. My personal email is nice, NICE, 3006 outdoors with an S at AOL.com. They can send an email, they can call, they can go through our website. We've got a little bit of something for everybody. And it doesn't have to be a hunter. I know a lot of folks that target shoot and don't hunt, but they still need an arrow rest. They need sights. They need a stabilizer. They need a release. We're just all about archery altogether. It's, we love to see people out shooting bows. I'm 42 years old. I've had a bow in my hand since I was 8 years old. Just love it. That's what I do. And, and that's why 30-06 was just a good match for me. I love designing and building things, and, to design and build hunting products. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? If you're an outdoorsman, it's almost a dream job.
Well, it pretty much is. Hey, talk to me a little about ATA. Are you members? Do you go to the show? Talk to me about that relationship.
ATA is great. They're if it's one of those shows that's actually kind of overwhelming for us. The ATA, we're there pretty much a week, setting up the booth, manning the booth, and thousands of people through the booth in a 3-day time that the show is actually open. But it takes a lot of time, a lot of preparation. Actually, this afternoon, here we are, May 5th, but this afternoon we're doing our booth selection for ATA in January, and then it won't be long, we'll have to start, because we do our own booth design. We build our own booth every year to put up at the show. So it's, I don't want to say it's a year-round thing, but it's always on our mind. And, it's our time of year. That's when we introduce all of our new product to the dealers. I call it the biggest show and tell place you can go to, because that's where everybody unveils the newest, the latest, the greatest. And, you get to see what's coming out for the new year. And the ATA in general has just done a lot to behind the scenes, so to speak, to help promote archery. You can go to their website. They've got, a ton of facts and figures and studies they've done. They track archery pretty close, and, they provide that information to us. So, lets everybody know, kind of validates what you're doing. When you see the numbers growing, they're compiling all that information so that, manufacturers and dealers and vendors, they see some validation, that, it's something worth, keeping working toward, that it's growing, and they do a great job, with the venue and just keeping the show going strong, and that's where dealers, we get to see a lot of our dealers. We only get to see them once a year. We have outside sales groups that work for us, but for us guys here at the office, that's the only time of year. We talk to them on the phone, but that's the one time a year you actually get to sit and talk to them for a little bit, and kind of build that relationship with them. And we're always excited to go and completely wore out and exhausted when you come home.
Well, thanks and I'll just give a shout out. Jay McManich was on our show yesterday. So if you missed the show, he's one great guy, and he's for archery, both target shooters, competitive shooters, Olympic shooters, or like a lot of us guys that go sit in a tree. So shout out to you, Jay. Great job. Hey, let's get back to stewardship. You touched on it a little bit when we talked about turkeys and whitetails, but let's talk about why you're a steward of your land, growing the deer, having a balanced herd, a healthy herd. Let's talk about that for a few minutes.
Sure. Well, for me, it's just one of those things. I mean, I've always have hectic days here at the office. Matt and I always say, everybody says, well, we wear different hats at work. And Matt said they don't make hat racks large enough for us. We do a lot of different things. And for me to get out there, on a tractor or on the 4-wheeler, just grab a saw and go out and hinge cut some trees or something to improve a bedding area or something. To me, that's it's not really work. It's just relaxation. And, to me, if, I like to harvest, a nice buck every year, maybe a doe or two for the meat, because my wife and I, we eat a lot of wild game. But, a lot of times I just sit there and never take the bow off the hook. But it's just enjoyable to watch all the wildlife, squirrels and rabbits and deer and turkeys. It just, to me, it's just relaxing and enjoyable, so the better I make the property, it's not all about just killing a big buck. That's what everybody wants to do. But, I always tell everybody, you can't kill a big buck if you shoot all the little ones. You know, if you've got a real nice 2.5-year-old deer and you shoot him, well, he's done. He's not going to get any bigger. So if you let him go to his 4 or 5 years old, and and I'm not saying that's for everybody, because there's guys that don't own property, but as long as they're happy with what they take, that's fine. I have no problem with that. It's the guys that, well, I can't kill a big buck, and then they complain. Well, guys, I'm sorry, but if you're killing all the little ones, you're not going to kill a big one. So I'm fortunate enough to have some property, small piece that I can take care of and manage, and on occasion, a neighbor down the road a ways, might take a buck that I would have let walk, but if he's happy with it, it's up to him. It's just life. That's the way it is. So that's. Excuse me. So that's just kind of my goal, is just to manage the best I can and provide the best food source for the deer that I can, and hopefully hold them as close to my property or on my property. And to me, I guess you call it a labor of love or whatever, but to me, it's just not work. I just enjoy going out there and seeing the property improve all the time.
Let's spend a couple of minutes, and we're coming up. We got about 5 minutes left of the show, and you use a lot of different products. And one thing that I like to do with people that are into growing a deer and being stewards of the land, because if you do that, if you take care of the land, guess what? The land's going to take care of you. So just tell us some of the products you use, and this is not an endorsement of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is our guest sharing what he uses and why he uses it. Go ahead, Scott.
We use Eagle seed. The guys at Eagle are great. They work hard to provide food plot blends that produce huge amounts of forage for deer. I like the Eagle beans. I plant a patch of those along with like a forage mix that's got some soybeans in it, wheat, radish, and some turnip in it. Because again, you want to do a step food plot. If you've got a 1 acre field, you don't want to plant the whole thing just in one seed. You want to break it up into thirds. And have, clover on one end, which is good through spring, summer, and early fall. But as soon as the frost hits, clover's done. It turns bitter and the deer don't like to eat it. So you need to have another food source that they're ready to move into. And the Eagle beans, what sets them aside from a standard agriculture bean that, your average farmer is going to go out and plant to harvest. The Eagle beans have a longer maturity time, which means that the plant's going to grow larger, produce more tonnage. The Eagle forage beans on a good crop will produce almost 10 tons of forage per acre, which is huge. And the beans on an agricultural bean, when the stalk turns brown and dies, the farmers have to harvest those beans really quickly because the pod will open up and the beans will fall out. So that's why, when they start turning brown, these guys are panicked. They got to go out and pick them. Well, the Eagle beans, the pod's not that brittle. It's genetically developed and designed. The deer, say in November, they actually have to chew on it a little bit to open that pod and get the bean out. The plant's going to be dead, but the actual beans are still going to be in the pod and they're going to be viable. So they actually have to go in, chew on them a little bit to get them open and eat the beans out of it. So they have the forage of the leaves to eat, late summer, through early fall. And then once the plant dies off, then they still have all the beans they can go through and eat. The Eagle mix with, your wheat and your radish and your turnip in it, that's something that after the frost hits, the frost is what turns the turnip tops sweet and the deer like it. That's when they'll eat it. So, those guys just, they know what they're doing. They've put a lot of time and effort into developing this. And I'm not saying there's not a lot of good stuff out there. It's just, I happen to use the Eagle stuff. I like it. And it seems to provide good food source for the deer.
Thanks for that. And we got just about a minute to wrap up the show. So if you got some quick shout outs, do that, and then we'll call it a show, Scott.
I just would like to thank you for having me on the show. And, again, anybody, that needs some archery accessories, check out 30-6.com. And I put my information out there. If you got any questions, call me. On
behalf of Whitetail Rendezvous, our listeners across North America, Scott Nice, thank you so much for sharing about 30-6 Outdoors and what you're doing there. And, keep on keeping on, friend.
I will, brother. Thank you.
Hey, make sure you listen to the next episode where you're going to hear about Relentless Addiction Outdoors. We welcome Mr. Relentless Addiction Outdoors himself, Rob Augustine, to the show. He is going to really share some neat stories about how their show is helping recruit youth into the outdoor industry.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and
remember
succeed.
Remember to text 33444 Food Plot for your free ebook